My biological mother abandoned me when I was 4 years old. 20 years later, she reappears, begging me to donate a kidney. But when I discovered she never told her husband I existed and called my job lying about me, I sued her and got a restraining order she'll never forget. I'm 25 years old. I work in it. I'm engaged to Jessica, and I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago basically made me rethink everything I believed about family and loyalty. The thing is, my biological mother, Victoria, abandoned me when I was 4 years old, and after 20 years of hearing nothing from her, she decided to reappear in my life, and let me tell you, it was a total disaster. Like worse than you could imagine. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was a kid. I don't remember much about Victoria, honestly, just blurry images and the feeling of confusion. What I do remember perfectly is the day she left me with the neighbors. She told me she'd be back soon, that she was just going out for a moment, and I stayed there waiting like an idiot, playing with some toy cars on their living room floor. The neighbors were good people, but they didn't understand what was happening, and neither did I. Hours passed, then days, and Victoria never came back. She just disappeared, as if I didn't exist, as if erasing me from her life was easier than facing whatever was going on with her. Social services got involved after a week, I think, or maybe it was 2. Time was weird back then. They tried to contact Victoria, but there was no way. She had changed her number, moved, basically vanished. Eventually, they reached my Aunt Margaret, the younger sister of my biological father, who had died in a car accident when I was 2. Aunt Margaret lived in another city, worked as a nurse, and honestly, I didn't know her that well because Victoria had never been one to keep in touch with my dad's family. But when they told her what had happened, she didn't think twice. She literally dropped everything and came for me. She was like 32 years old at the time, single, no kids of her own, and decided to formally adopt me. Growing up with Aunt Margaret, well, with Mom as I've called her since I can remember, was the best thing that could have happened to me. She raised me with love, patience, gave me stability, a home where I felt safe, and basically saved me from ending up in the foster system or who knows where. My grandparents were always there too, super involved, and my cousin Connor, Margaret's sister's son, was practically like my brother because we spent all our time together. It was a good childhood, you know what I mean? Not perfect, because obviously there were unanswered questions about my biological mom, but I was happy. I felt loved, and that's more than a lot of people can say. I didn't know I was adopted until I was 18. Margaret decided to tell me just before I started college. She said I deserved to know the truth now that I was an adult. I sat in her kitchen, at that wooden table where we'd had breakfast together for years, and she told me everything, from the abandonment to the formal adoption. I'm not going to lie, it was hard to process. I felt confused, angry, even betrayed, but not with Margaret, never with her. I was angry with Victoria, with a woman who was basically a stranger to me, but who had had the power to potentially ruin my life with her selfishness. I went to therapy for a while, talked to Dr. Anderson about all this, and eventually reached a point where I simply didn't think about Victoria. It was like she didn't exist, and I was at peace with that. Fast forward to like 6 months ago. I was at work, normal day, reviewing code, drinking my 3rd cup of coffee, when I got a friend request on social media. The name was Victoria Miller, but the last name didn't ring any bells because she had had my maiden name when I was a kid. It was her, older obviously, with hair dyed a weird blonde, but definitely Victoria. The message that came with the request said something like, "Hi Benjamin, I know it's been a long time, but I'd like to talk to you if you're willing. Please, give me a chance." My first reaction was panic. Literal panic. I felt like the floor was moving under my feet. I sent a screenshot to Jessica, my fiancée, and she was shocked too. That night we talked for hours about what I should do, whether I should respond or just block her and move on with my life. Part of me, the curious part that I guess we all have, wanted to know why she had abandoned me, what had happened in her life, if she had ever thought about me during all those years. But another more sensible part knew it probably wouldn't bring anything good. In the end, against Jessica's better judgment, and after consulting with Dr. Anderson, I decided to respond. I told her I was willing to meet once, just to talk, but that I wasn't promising anything more. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my office, a public place where I felt safe. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. I don't know. I think I wanted to have some kind of control over the situation. Victoria was already there, sitting at a table in the back, with a coffee in front of her that she hadn't touched. She looked nervous, playing with a napkin, folding and unfolding it. When she saw me, she stood up immediately, like she was going to hug me, but something in my body language must have stopped her because she just extended her hand. I shook it briefly and sat down across from her. The first words that came out of her mouth were, "You look so much like your father." And honestly, I didn't know how to respond to that. She started talking, basically told me that she had had drug problems when I was a kid, that her life was out of control, that abandoning me had been the best thing for me at the time. She said she had been in and out of rehab for years, that she had eventually married a man named Robert, that they'd been together for like 15 years, that she was clean now and wanted to repair the damage. It all sounded very rehearsed, you know? Like she had practiced that speech 1,000 times in front of the mirror. What bothered me was when she started mentioning things about money in a subtle way, like, things have been difficult financially, and Robert is between jobs. At that moment, I didn't give it much importance, but looking back, it should have been a massive red flag. I told her that I appreciated that she had come, and that I understood she had had her problems, but that I wasn't interested in having a relationship with her. I was clear, or at least I thought I was. I told her that Margaret was my mother, that she had raised me, that I had a life and a family that I cared about, and that Victoria was basically a stranger to me. I thought that would be enough, that she would get the message and leave me alone. But no. She started sending me messages constantly. Long texts about how she had changed, photos of her and Robert, stories about her life. Jessica kept telling me to block her, that she obviously didn't respect the boundaries I had established, but I kept responding occasionally, trying to be polite, trying not to be the bad guy in the story. Basically, I was an idiot. Things got weird when Robert contacted me directly. Turns out Victoria had never told him she had a son. Imagine, 15 years of marriage, and this guy had no idea I existed. He sent me a super confused message, saying he had just discovered the truth, that Victoria had lied to him during their entire marriage, and that he wanted to meet me. This was like 3 weeks after my meeting with Victoria, and honestly, I felt super uncomfortable with the whole situation. I responded briefly, told him I was sorry he had found out that way, but that I wasn't interested in getting involved in their marriage or their problems. I decided to write a formal letter to Victoria. Honestly, I was fed up with all the drama. I made it clear, with no room for misinterpretation, that I didn't want contact with her, that she should respect my space, respect my life, and stop trying to force a relationship that I didn't want. Margaret helped me write it. She's always been good with words. Super diplomatic but firm. We sent the letter by certified mail, so she couldn't say she never received it. The response came like a week later, but it wasn't a letter. It was a text message from a number I didn't recognize. The number of one of Victoria's children. I have no idea which one because apparently she has like 3 more, all younger than me. The message said something like, "My mom is sick, she needs a kidney transplant, and you're compatible according to blood type. Please consider donating." And just like that, without preamble, without context, without even introducing themselves properly. I stared at the message for like 10 minutes, trying to process what I was reading. Jessica was with me when I got it. We were watching a movie in the living room, and she literally snatched the phone from my hands to read the message. She got furious, like angrier than I had ever seen. Awe her. She started yelling about how Victoria was a manipulator, how the whole approach had been about this, how she had probably researched me, found out I worked at a good company, had health insurance, and decided I was her best option to get a kidney. At first, I didn't want to believe it, you know? Because accepting that meant accepting that my biological mother was basically a monster, that she had looked for me after 20 years, not because she cared about me as a person, but because she needed me as a resource, as a source of spare parts. But the more I thought about it, the more sense everything made. The mentions about money, the insistence on maintaining contact, Robert's sudden introduction into the equation, probably to make me feel guilty or to have someone else pressuring me. I decided to confront her directly. I sent her a message saying I knew about the kidney, that I understood that was the real reason for her contact, and that my answer was a resounding no. That even if she had been a present and loving mother throughout my life, donating an organ is a huge decision that no one should feel obligated to make, and that I definitely wasn't going to do it for a stranger who had abandoned me and was now manipulating me. Her response was pathetic. Honestly, she started with denials, saying, "How could I think that of her, that she only wanted to get to know me, that the kidney issue was separate?" But when I made it clear I wasn't going to change my mind, she completely changed her tone. She started sending me horrible messages, telling me I was selfish, that she had given me life, that I owed her this, that basically I was responsible for keeping her alive because I was her son. Robert also started contacting me, sending me messages about how Victoria was dying, how I was her only hope, how I could live perfectly fine with one kidney. What completely broke me was when they offered me money. Literally, Robert sent me a message saying they would pay me for my kidney, that they would find a way to make it legal, that I just needed to sign some papers. He was offering like $50,000, I think, as if that was going to change anything, as if the problem was that I was negotiating a better price. I sent a screenshot to my lawyer. Yeah, by that point I had already hired one because the situation was completely out of control. I blocked all of Victoria's numbers. Robert's, their kids, anyone associated with her. I changed my privacy settings on all social media. I told my boss at work that there might be a complicated family situation and that if anyone called, asking about me, not to give any information. And basically, I went into full protection mode. But Victoria didn't give up, because of course not. The next thing I knew, my boss called me into his office. He looked super serious and asked me if there was anything I needed to tell him about my personal situation. Turns out Victoria had called my company, pretended to be, I don't know what, and had started saying lies about me, things about how I had drug problems, that I was violent, that I had stolen money from her. She literally tried to sabotage my career because I refused to give her a kidney. Fortunately, my boss knows me well. We've been working together for like 3 years, and he didn't believe any of it. But it was still humiliating to have to explain the whole situation. My lawyer, who by this point had everything documented, told me we had a solid case for a restraining order and potentially a defamation lawsuit. We started the legal process immediately. I also decided, after talking a lot with Jessica, Margaret, and Dr. Anderson, to make my story public. I wrote a long post on my personal blog telling everything, from the abandonment to the recent manipulation, without names at first, but making clear what had happened. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people sharing similar stories, offering support, telling me I had done the right thing. Victoria, obviously, found out about the post and went crazy. She started commenting everywhere, saying I was lying, that she had never abandoned me, that I was an ungrateful son. This only served to make more people see her erratic and manipulative behavior. My lawyer used all of that as additional evidence for the restraining order. The order was approved like 2 weeks later. Victoria was forbidden from contacting me in any way, approaching my house, my work, or any place where she knew I would be. I thought I could finally breathe easy, that it was all over. But then, like a month later, Jessica and I were at home on a Saturday afternoon, cooking together, when the doorbell rang. Jessica went to answer because she was expecting a package, and suddenly, I heard her scream my name with an urgency that froze my blood. I ran to the door, and there they were, Victoria and Robert, standing on my porch like nothing, like there wasn't a restraining order, like they had every right to be there. Victoria started talking immediately, saying she just wanted to talk, that she needed me to understand how serious her situation was, that I was killing her by my fault. Robert was trying to calm her down, but at the same time looking at me with this expression that mixed pleading and anger. I didn't say a word. I closed the door, took out my phone, and called the police. I told them there were 2 people violating an active restraining order on my property, and that I felt threatened. Victoria and Robert could hear me through the door, and they started knocking harder, yelling that I couldn't do this to them, that they just wanted to talk. Jessica was recording everything on her phone, shaking, and I just wanted them gone. to disappear from my life forever. The police arrived in less than 10 minutes. They removed Victoria and Robert from my property, explained the consequences of violating a restraining order, and basically told them that if they came near me again, they would go to jail. Victoria was crying, screaming that I was killing her, that it was my responsibility to save her. One of the officers looked at me and told me, very clearly, that I had no legal or moral obligation to do anything for this woman, and to do whatever was necessary to protect myself. After that, my lawyer proceeded with the defamation lawsuit. We have all the evidence, the messages, the calls to my work, the false public comments. I don't know how all this is going to end legally. Honestly, the process is slow and frustrating, but at least I feel like I'm doing something, that I'm not just letting her run over me. Victoria is on dialysis now, from what I heard, and apparently she's on a waiting list for a kidney transplant from a deceased donor. I don't feel anything about it, and that makes me feel weird sometimes, like I should feel something, guilt or pity or whatever. But the truth is she made her choices. I made mine, and I don't owe anything to someone who saw me as a medical solution before seeing me as a human being. Margaret has been incredible through all this, obviously. She has never pressured me or made me feel guilty. She's just constantly reminded me that I'm her son, that she loves me, and that she will always support me. Jessica and I moved up the wedding. We got married like 3 weeks ago in a small ceremony, just close family and friends. No drama, no Victoria trying to show up. It was perfect, exactly what we needed. Dr. Anderson told me something recently that stuck with me. He told me that family isn't just about blood or genetics. It's about who chooses to be present, who chooses to love you unconditionally, who chooses to put you first. Margaret chose to be my mother when she had no obligation to do so. Victoria chose to abandon me when things got difficult, and then chose to manipulate me when she needed me. Those choices say everything I need to know about who deserves to be in my life. I still have difficult days, days where I wonder if I did the right thing, if I should have at least considered the donation, if I'm really as selfish as Victoria says I am. But then I think about everything that happened, the manipulation, the lies, how she never cared about how I felt, only about what I could do for her. And the doubt fades. No one has a right to your body, to your organs, to your health, regardless of the relationship they have with you or the circumstances they're facing. Last week, Connor asked me if I would ever regret my decision. I told him the truth, that I didn't know, that maybe in 20 years I'd look back and feel differently, but that right now, with the information I have and with the person I am now, I know I made the right decision for me. He nodded, gave me a hug, and told me that was enough. And I guess he's right, that's enough for now.